This is the car owned by the top-ranking Level 73 boss. It's a Willys Jeep, produced in 1942, meaning it's already over 80 years old. It probably even took part in the Second World War. The boss paid so much for it that the money could have bought us a few loudspeakers. The car had been sitting idle for years, completely out of commission. It can no longer start, and out of its four wheels. 3 won't even turn the paint on the body. About 90% of it flakes off with just a touch. So in the winter of 2024, I decided to fully disassemble the vehicle. First, I removed its simple outer shell, then drained out the engine. We began the restoration from the engine backward. Looking at this engine today, its workmanship is extremely rough, and the oil inside was thick and black. Who knows when it was last changed? Luckily, the reason it couldn't start was that its valves had rusted and seized up. There are 8 valves, and 6 of them were completely stuck. I polished the valves 3 times until they met the conditions for starting again. When cleaning the engine, I even had to call upon my clone to help. Together, we cleaned every inch of the engine, inside and out. Now, it finally meets the conditions for a full restoration. Next, we can start reassembling it. This engine was specifically designed for World War II, and its internal structure is much simpler than modern tractors, which explains its legendary reliability and also makes it fun to repair, almost like playing a game. After assembly, we drained it out, sandblasted the surface to remove rust, then sprayed a layer of high-temperature epoxy primer, followed by a factory original color coat. Finally, we mounted the engine and transmission together, marking the completion of their fusion. As an old poem would say, perfection side by side. I set the restored engine aside and moved on to the chassis. To save time, I towed it to a sandblasting shop for a full rust removal after 80 years. The blasting revealed the bare steel, along with blue rust stains across the frame. For badly corroded parts, I cut them out completely and welded in new metal, shaped exactly the same. Then I repaired every other damaged area, and without waiting applied epoxy primer for rust prevention, followed by the factory original color code. With that, the chassis restoration was complete. I installed the front and rear axles, then opened the rear differential cover to check the inside. The oil inside looked 80 years old too. No longer lubricating, just sticky like asshole. I cleaned it out with gasoline, and fortunately, the gears were still intact with minimal wear. After replacing the gasket and applying sealant, I reassembled it all. Now, we can move on to fixing the problem of the 3 wheels that refused to turn. I opened up the inside of the wheels and found that every single brake joint was completely rusted solid. So there was no shortcut. I had to clean everything from scratch. Piece by piece, I cleaned all 8 bearings on the car. Since these are tapered bearings, their wear is negligible as long as the bearing rollers they can still be reused. Unfortunately, the inner wheel panels weren't so lucky. Years of oil buildup mixed with heavy corrosion made it impossible to clean them with gasoline alone. So I had to remove them again and send them to the sandblasting machine for a full surface strip. After sandblasting, the panels came out spotlessly clean, and you could clearly see the traces of rust left behind. But that's nothing to worry about. Now, the biggest issue is the brake master cylinders. There are 4 of them, and all 4 were completely rusted out. So the only option was to find modern replacements with similar dimensions. Luckily, I managed to find ones that were almost the same length, but the thread size was different. That meant I had to remachine the original cylinder ports, widen the openings on a lathe, and fit the new replacement parts perfectly. Once that was done, everything fits snugly and tightly. With that problem solved, we could finally reinstall the system. The brake assembly on this vehicle is astonishingly simple, reliable. As long as it doesn't go back into another second season of war, this setup could easily last another 80 years with the wheels reinstalled. The chassis restoration is now complete. Now, we can put the engine back in place. But if we want this 80-year-old veteran to run a few more years, we've got to reduce its weight and tear. For an engine, the most crucial part lies in that ultra-thin, yet incredibly strong layer of oil film. As long as the film is strong enough, it can keep wear under control and protect the engine for the long run. Take my advice, let's use good oil. It's never a loss to invest in quality here. If you don't know which to choose, go for Castrol Magnatec Full Synthetic. It's a bestseller for a reason. Now that the engine assembly is nearly complete, it's time for us to try starting it up. Wish us luck. At long last, this 80-year-old engine finally roared back to life, firing up like a blade slicing through time. The engine runs smoothly, steady as ever, though the current shutdown method is a bit rough. Once we reconnect the full electrical system, that'll be taken care of. Now it's time to move on to the bodywork. For us, fixing the engine and chassis wasn't too much trouble, but working on the outer panels and frame, that's where things start to get tricky. Most of the base metal is rusted through, so I decided it was time to use my secret technique once again. Soon I realized, even though the paint was cracked and peeling, it was still surprisingly hard to strip off. So with no other choice, I had to unleash my special move again, summoning my clone to help me tackle the job together. This thing was a real pain to deal with. No matter how hard we tried, it still wasn't coming off completely. So I said, forget it, let's just take it for sandblasting. In a moment, we'll use fine-grained sand to blast the side panels, until the surface reveals its metallic color, pure raw steel. And I want you to remember this moment, how it looks now worn, weathered, and full of history. I spent a total of 800 yuans to have the entire body sandblasted clean, stripping away every last bit of old paint and rust. Now, the whole car's bare metal is fully exposed. You can clearly see small rust spots scattered all over. And on parts like the footboards, there are large connected patches of corrosion. But what really surprised me was discovering that even the fuel tank had rusted through completely, even away beyond repair. I measured the thickness of the body panels. Turns out they're a solid 1.6 millimeters thick. So now I need to get a new sheet of steel of the same size and restore it according to the original shape. This car really is an 80-year-old troublemaker full of hidden problems. It seems to rust out only in the most critical, load-bearing spots just to give us more headaches. So the only solution is to cut out the corroded sections, then fabricate and weld in new panels that perfectly match the original contours. Seamless and precise, just like it used to be. For the final step, I used fine sand to move out all the welded joints, grinding them down until the seams completely disappeared. You can't even tell where the repairs were made. I've got to say, that job turned out beautifully. Really proud how clean it looks. After that, I went over the rest of the car, performing layered welding and touch-up repairs on every spot that had been damaged or corroded, making sure the entire body was restored and solid once again. With that, the side panel repair was finally complete. I didn't waste a single moment, immediately rolled it out and sprayed on a thick layer of epoxy primer. As the first line of rust protection, I made sure to apply the primer extra thick, hoping it'll stand strong for another 80 years. Then over the surface, I added a thin coat of putty to level out any minor unevenness, ensuring the entire body stays perfectly smooth. Now, it's ready for the next step, sending it to the paint booth to apply a factory original color top coat, just like it looked when it first rolled off the line. This was the final step of the paint process. The surface was gradually heated and baked to fully cure the coating, giving it that matte olive green finish. The car has nearly 200 large and small components, and with patience and care, I sandblasted and repainted each one from start to finish. When I reinstalled the body shell, I also added a layer of underbody armor. It not only reduces noise, but also provides extra rust protection. I truly hope this car can hold on for another 80 years. And with Castrol Magnatec full synthetic oil protecting the engine, it's even more likely to run strong for decades to come. Now that everything's in place, it's finally time for us to begin the last stage, the full reassemble. With that, the 1942 Willys Jeep is finally fully restored. The process was brutal. I went through hunger, running around, sweating, getting knocked around, everything. But the sense of accomplishment is huge. I also tracked down all the car's parts: a grease box, emergency iron wire, that rear gadget, an auxiliary fuel tank, a spare tire, and a fire extinguisher. Now, gonna take you for a spin in this 80-plus-year-old old fella. And that's the story of me and the 1942 Willys Jeep. A journey of rust, sweat, and pure dedication. Thank you for your help along the way.